Greetings, gaming citizens. Mike here, and welcome back to another episode of Michael Talks About video game related presentations, because I've done quite a few this year. So, it's been about a week since the Game Awards happened, and we have a bit to talk about. So, leading up to the show, in between when I made my nominee predictions video and the actual show itself, news came out about the Game Awards over the course of a few weeks, and I was taking some notes about some criticisms I had before the show. And now that the show has actually happened, I want to talk about those criticisms with the context of the show having already happened, as well as just kind of putting together my opinions of the Game Awards from this year and what I think the show should focus on going forward. If you haven't already seen, I kind of wrote an article about this on Medium. I'll link in the description down below. I'm trying to get more into like journalism for games, which I know is like a dumpster fire right now, but it's just something I'm doing uh, in my spare time. So definitely check it out if that is something you want to do. If you'd rather read instead of listening to my beautiful voice, I don't know, for a demographic of you, I'm sure that is appealing. Anyway, let's get right into my before the show criticisms that I had about the Game Awards. So this is before the show actually happened. So to start off, we're going to talk about the best game direction category. So the Game Awards defines this as awarded for outstanding creative vision and innovation in game direction and design. Cool. What the does that mean? Like, genuinely, what does that actually mean? Because if we're looking at a game for outstanding creative vision and innovation in direction and design, I feel like the only people that really get an understanding of how a game is designed and how it's directed are the people that are actually making the games. And considering the jury is just game journalist outlets, that doesn't really that doesn't sound completely fair. Like, as I'm like a regular gamer voting on the Game Awards, I don't intrinsically have the knowledge of game development to be able to say this game was directed very well. So why are all of us voting on this? Like, even game journalists probably have even the slightest bit more knowledge about just games, but when you think about it, games journalists are just people that talk about video games and get paid like pocket change for it. So we're kind of on the same level of we have no idea what the hell is going on in the game development sphere. So how can we vote on best game direction in good conscience? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And also, the Game of the Year nominees are the nominees for best game direction. Like, this has been echoed by like 100 other YouTubers by this point, but I'm gonna say it again. If a game gets best game direction, of course it's gonna get Game of the Year. Because if it didn't have good game direction, why would it be the Game of the Year? It just feels like an unnecessary category. And this has been a problem with the show since it started in 2014. So, what are we doing here, Jeff? What are we doing, Mr. Keeley? Another thing I want to talk about while we're mentioning Game of the Year is, holy crap, I was very wrong about Game of the Year. I am so sorry, Astrobot and Balatro developer Locothunk. I was not aware of your game. Game as in, like, metaphorically, like, your ability to be awesome. Not like your actual game, because I love the idea of Astrobot. Anyway, yeah, I had not anticipated Astrobot cleaning up the show the way that it did. Much less, like, getting all the nominations that it did. And Balatro, I mean, the 3 time in a row, like, holy crap, that, for an indie, even for an indie game, for any game, getting, like, 3 awards in a row at the show, like, that was huge. That, honestly, well-deserved. But yes, we're gonna address the Erdtree in the room, and that's the Elden Ring DLC getting nominated for Game of the Year. Now, I know that everybody has kind of said their piece on it, and well, I'll be honest, I'm just gonna say it again like everybody else did. I don't think it should have been nominated. I'm sorry if there are Elden Ring fans that watch my videos. I'm sorry, but DLC shouldn't be nominated for Game of the Year. The website has had a variation of the rule saying that, like, ongoing games could be nominated for Game of the Year, and people are claiming, and I wrongfully thought that people were just like making controversy about that. Turns out they were referencing a brand new rule that was added just days before the nominees were even announced, saying that DLCs and expansion packs and remakes, remasters are eligible for Game of the Year. And, in terms of remakes and remasters, we kind of already knew that. I mean, 2020, we had Final Fantasy VII Remake, God of War, the 2018, I want to say it was a reboot. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below. That was nominated back in 2018. We've had a Resident Evil 2 remake was nominated in 2019. We even had the Resident Evil 4 remake nominated for Game of the Year last year. So I feel like remakes and remasters were already on the table. But yeah, DLCs are somehow nominated for Game of the Year. That doesn't make sense. Jeff, what are we doing here? Definitionally speaking, Shadow of the Erdtree is not a game. It can be good. It can be a masterpiece. It can be a masterclass of design. People have been saying it's basically Elden Ring 1.5. I will not deny the quality of Shadow of the Erdtree, but I will deny its eligibility as a game nominee for Game of the Year. It does not make sense. I mean, what was stopping Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty from getting nominated for Game of the Year? Granted, 2023 was a very competitive year for video games, but if it wasn't, do you think in that alternate timeline that Phantom Liberty would have been up for the Game of the Year? I feel like these are the kinds of questions we need to be asking. Jeff, I know I'm already asking this a lot. What are we doing here? But it's not all bad, because when I was taking notes on this before the Game Awards actually happened, there were just a handful of improvements that were being made to the show, and I wanted to, give those a mention. For one, all the nominees for Best Indie were indeed indie games, so we didn't have a Dave the Diver situation. So for those not in the know, last year, Dave the Diver was nominated for Best Indie, and I don't know if it won. Correct me on screen, editor, if I'm wrong, but Dave the Diver was partially developed and published by Nexon, which is a big company. That goes against the idea that it's an independent game, so that we didn't have a situation like that this year, so very thankful for that. Good on you, jury. And then also, we had CanIPlayThat.com being added as a juror for accessibility. And CanIPlayThat.com is a website that I use when trying to predict the nominees for innovation and accessibility. And yeah, I just think that's a really good thing, because it seems like a no-brainer of a website to really include, so I'm glad they did it. But now getting into the post-show feedback, this is where we got to see all the colors fly, all the music played. I mean, there were some great performances. But anyway, we're going to start off with the criticisms, because we've got a little bit of ground to cover with the show's structure. So we're going to start off with a tiny bit that I think is really funny. Ken Kutaragi, basically the father of the PlayStation, the creator of the PlayStation, was called out in the audience because he was in the front row, because it was PlayStation's 30th anniversary. That's pretty awesome. Ken Kutaragi literally stood up and was approaching the stage because he thought that Jeff was inviting him to come on stage and say a few words. But no, he was just left standing there. Like, you can even see it on the live stream. It's, rumor has it Ken Kutaragi is still just standing at that stage waiting to speak. I feel bad for the guy. And I feel like this comes down to, like, a language barrier thing, obviously. So I don't really know if I can really make this, like, the Game Awards' fault. I don't think it is. I think it's just a matter of Kutaragi didn't have an interpreter, so he couldn't have known. He was probably confused. Similar to how Hideo Kojima seemed confused when the Muppets were calling him out. He seemed to just be kind of smiling and letting it all happen, but yeah, he probably had no idea what the hell everybody was laughing about. But getting into the big criticism I have with the show, and this is the problem that's probably existed for most of the time that the Game Awards has existed, most of the show was ads. Now, having said that, a lot of the world premieres were good. I think they were very interesting. A lot of the announcements, they hit it out of the park. I think it was great. But someone did the math. If you look at a video from Good Vibes Gaming, I'll have a thumbnail on screen with like a card up here somewhere. They did some of the calculation of how much time went towards the actual awards in contrast to the actual show, and I converted that into percentages, and only 21.7% Of the Game Awards, 3 hours and 12 minutes runtime was the actual awards, which is down from the roughly 30% awards content from last year. This is a massive issue. Like, I probably sound a little bit dramatic, but I think it's a huge problem if you're calling yourself the Game Awards, marketing yourself as the Oscars of gaming, and then most of your show is not any of that at all. So you're more emphasizing the game part of the Game Awards and not the awards part of the Game Awards. You see what I'm saying? And like like I said, I loved a lot of the world premieres, but there were some award categories that you would think would get the main stage presence, but they just didn't because everything else was just fully bloated of these world premieres. Again, a lot of them were good, but they still took up a whole lot of the show's runtime. I can promise you right now, they could have saved a little bit of time. Like, Nintendo threw in an advertisement for The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, a game that came out 3 months ago. Why? Like, that's probably the easiest bag Jeff ever made, getting $250K just for like 30 seconds of, hey, this Zelda game that's up for action adventure game that came out 3 months ago. You should go buy it. It's like, why is it there? What are we doing here? That's kind of just becoming the whole question of this video. Like, what is going on here? Because I feel like a majority of the audience is just hardcore gamers, so the people who are already interested in Echoes of Wisdom already bought the game. I don't think many, if not any, people watching the Game Awards saw this Echoes of Wisdom ad and were just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go buy that right now. Like, I cannot foresee a timeline where that had a reasonable impact on Nintendo sales. But, maybe when they put out a financial report, maybe then we'll know. But also, Fortnite had way too many trailers. Ever since Fortnite split up into like multiple different like game modes of, your rocket racing, your festival, battle royale, Lego Fortnite, they have like 5 million ads going on like everywhere. And in the Game Awards alone, I literally counted when I was co-streaming the event. Check out my previous videos, or I think my live tab on my YouTube page if you want to see my co-stream of it. I counted 5 separate ads for Fortnite. You do not need that much, considering like a 30-second ad is about $250,000 as it was leaked last year. That's like 1.25 million of Epic Games money just going into Jeff's pocket for like the most asinine Fortnite trailers for stuff that, might I remind you, was already revealed by Epic Games literal days before the Game Awards. Like, again, okay, I'm going against my own point that a lot of hardcore gamers watch the Game Awards, but you really don't need 5 Fortnite trailers. Like, it feels like way too much. And I feel like all that time, like, the 5 trailers, if you removed all the Fortnite trailers, you could have had enough time to put up, like, Best Fighting Game, the Best Fighting Game Award acceptance speech on the main stage instead of just having the director of Tekken sitting on the side stage. Like, I feel like there needs to be a shift in priorities with how the show is run at this point with ad density. But I'm being very harsh. This is not to say that the show was completely bad. There were some good parts of the show. For one, there was the speech from Amir Satvat, who has been kind of single-handedly, well, I guess not single-handedly, but has been a figurehead of the games industry in the past year or two. His story about putting together resources to give people mentorship and helping people get into the games industry with all these unprecedented layoffs, like his commitment to helping people, even going as far as to, as of now, the recording of this video, getting 3,000 people employed in the games industry, that's monumental. And his speech, like, really spoke to me because he's from New England, just like I am. And I had always felt a sense of doubt that I couldn't really make it in the games industry because I'm from New England and all the other big companies, they're on the West Coast, and I'm not trying to, move across the country right now. So if you saw my co-stream, you would know that I almost cried at that speech. It was genuinely incredible, and to see him get an award, the inaugural Game Changer Award, for his contributions to the industry, it was beautiful. I think that was probably one of the best parts of the show for me. I think it was genuinely incredible. But also, doubling down on the fact that the games being revealed were awesome. Okami too. Hello? Like, nobody thought that was gonna happen. I would never have guessed Okami 2 would be a thing, but here we are. That's just awesome. That was like a highlight of the show for me in terms of announcements. I mean, a lot of announcements kind of went over my head. There were some cool like retro revivals, but as someone who didn't really grow up with the retro games or the games that we call retro today, they're kind of just like an okay, that's cool thing to me. That's the curse of being a young person, I suppose. But stellar announcements being shown off. Like it was genuinely incredible. Probably the best game awards ever in terms of just the weight of announcements. Like it was crazy. And now I want to get to the last part of this video, which is the going forward portion. So, if by some way the Game Awards creative director for next year's show is watching this video, these are the takeaways that I think are important to keep in mind when working on the Game Awards in the next 10 years, since we're already at the first decade of the Game Awards, which is crazy to think about. So, first bullet point, I still think, and I said this last year in my Game Awards video last year, a specialized jury for indie games would be a good idea. There were no controversies with the selections for Best Indie Game this year. All the nominees were great, but I still think that a specialized jury would just be a good thing to have. You already have one for esports. You already have one for accessibility. And, there's plenty of independent gaming news outlets and, indie game reviewers. You could just get them all in like a group chat just being like, what are the best indie games? And they could tell you off the top of their head, like, 5 indie games that came out that maybe the big outlets didn't even have time to cover. I think it would be cool. That's just me. Also, introduce a best expansion or DLC category. The Erdtree controversy was a lot, and it's, within reason, with good reason. Like, it should not have been up for Game of the Year. But also, we're seeing a lot of, like, expansions and DLC becoming a norm, or they have been for some time. Why not just make a category for them? The Golden Joystick Awards by, I think it's Games Radar that does that. They've been doing this for years, and it works without a hitch because there's plenty of great content updates being put out for any different games. No reason not to do a best expansion or DLC category at this point. This is one of those awards that could even work well on the side stage if you don't want to put it on the main stage. Speaking of categories, something going forward, and this is a very big opinion of mine, just saying that right now, there's a few categories that I think should be discontinued because of redundancy. So first we have game direction, which I know is like, why the hell would you get rid of best game direction? That's one of the most important awards. When you think about it, it's just another, it's a duplicate of the Game of the Year category. Because like I said, if a game has the best game direction, I feel like that makes it Game of the Year. And if a game doesn't have the best game direction, why would it win Game of the Year? It feels just completely redundant. And the nominees are identical to the Game of the Year nominees. 9 times out of 10, there's just no reason to have it there. And plus, it's incredibly vague. If you're gonna keep best game direction, at least try to explain what best game direction actually means. Give us a reason to vote on it, because most of us, I know I sure as hell don't know how game development works, so how can I in good conscience vote on what game has the best game direction? You can't tell how a game was directed by just playing the damn thing. You have to be in the studio. You have to know how the sausage is made, like, or however that expression goes, Like, you have to know how the game is made to know how it was. You see where I'm going with it? I'm going to stop repeating myself. Anyway, esports categories. I think that should also go. Not because it doesn't belong at the Game Awards, but the Esports Awards are also kind of a big deal now. Like, that's been steadily growing year over year, and, esports as a niche is kind of growing. I feel like if you just handed this off to the Esports Awards to hand out themselves, you're saving yourself a bit of time. I mean, you even just throw the esports categories on the side stage during the pre-show anyway, so clearly you don't care about it enough to even let anyone go on stage to accept the award for it. So why not just hand it off to someone whose specialty is esports? Clearly, you guys don't care about it. And then also, I might get a bit of flack for this. Content Creator of the Year. No hate to the people that get nominated for this award. And I'm definitely not salty for not having been nominated for it because, I mean, look at me. But I feel like the names that are picked for Best Content Creator of the Year are picked out of a hat. You know, I keep seeing year over year, every time the Best Content Creator category is announced, like they announce the nominees, I just hear millions of people just go, who is this? Who is that? You get like one person that everybody knows, and then 4 people that nobody knows. Like, there was, Queso this year. A lot of people love Queso. I think Queso was pretty cool. And then you have like 4 other creators that probably haven't even heard of. And, I get it. Content creation is like a very wide landscape. Pretty much anyone around the world can be a content creator. I mean, look at me. But yeah, it just feels like, I don't know, it just feels like it doesn't have a lot of staying power at the Game Awards. It feels like they also just don't care about it because they throw it in the pre-show. They just get it out of the way. They bullshit those kinds of awards. Like, let's reconsider what our priorities are and what the Game Awards is really about. I feel like if there was a category to cut, it would be that one. And yeah, that's about all the notes I really have for the Game Awards from this year. I think it's a good show. A lot of people hate it. Say what you will about Jeff Keighley, say what you will about the Game Awards. I still like the show. I want it to be better. I genuinely want this show to be better and to be more well-liked, but there is a lot of work to do if we're going to get to that point. And, it took quite a while. It took 10 years to get to the point that it is now. Hopefully, it's all uphill from here. I feel like we worked out a lot of the major kinks in the system with the Game Awards, and we just need to streamline it to balance the priorities of ad density and creating a good viewership experience and focusing on what makes the Game Awards the Game Awards rather than just focusing on world premieres. Maybe have less world premieres. That, you know what? Actually, yeah, that's a bullet point I forgot to put on here in my notes. Maybe have less world premieres. Because if you announce that there's 50 plus world premieres, it's a matter of quantity versus quality. Would you rather have 50 kind of whatever, may or may not be exciting announcements, or maybe like 30 announcements that a lot of people will be interested in, that are really high quality? Like you gotta ask yourself those kinds of questions. You gotta play around, push the button. I don't know what motions I'm doing here, but you kind of get what I'm saying. I think in the years going forward, they should really focus on making the world premieres feel more special. I think that might be one of the biggest priorities that can really overhaul the show and make it better to watch for a lot of people. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. If I, missed anything, speaking out of line with one of the points that I'm really making, let me know what you think about the Game Awards this year and what you think they can improve on in the years going forward. That's going to be it for me. Stay vibing and thriving, everyone. I will see you in the next one.